All right, so what do we got, man? Introduce yourself. Tell us about your channel and anything else you think anybody should know.
Yeah, so my name is Connor Reevy. I run the YouTube channel Untamed Outdoorsmen. I've been doing that for just about 7 years, ballpark 7 years. Yeah, we kind of started out slow, but I would say like maybe early 2022, late 2021, we really started firing on all cylinders. Really kind of um, really consistently done it. I think I've been doing weekly uploads for at least 3 years now, probably 4 years. I always say it's easily the most fun part-time job you could ever have. I don't even view it as that. I just view it as kind of an extension to the fun I already have on the water. It's just expanding on what I already do. I don't view it as a job. I don't view it as like, oh, I gotta go make video. Oh, I gotta go record. I gotta go make videos. I gotta go edit videos. Like, I don't view that as something I have to do. I'm like, oh, I get to do that.
Yeah.
So that's that's always been what it's been about. It's never been about like trying to replace your day job or trying to like make it big and be like Chad Hoover or something. I'm not trying to do that. That's just, I don't think that's the life I have, and that's perfectly fine. But, the goal is helping people and having fun along the way. I see all the comments, I read all the comments. So yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah, you're very active on your channel. I noticed that. And anybody that comments, you always take the time to, click the like and do a response. So,
Yeah, yeah, I always do. I mean, we're definitely one of those channels that are a little more strict on the comments just because I think, life is way too short to be negative or deal with negative things or be around negative people. So, we are very strict on comments, but we have a really great community. The people that comment, that's like, a once every 6 month thing that I have to remove comments. So super grateful for that. So I try to respond to everybody, really to go above and beyond on, responding.
now that I started this channel, I was looking at it. I'm like, I don't even know 1,000 people. Who the hell is clicking on this link? I don't physically know 1,000 people, so I don't. It's like weird how it gets out there, and then, of course, I look at the demographic, and it's like 98% men, and then 1% women, and then
Yeah, and it's all like
98% US, 1% Australia.
yeah, it's all
Like,
like I would say like the majority of our demographic is like age 45 and up and male. And I'm 24 years old. So it's kind of funny in that regard, but yeah, I definitely know what you mean. Like I think we have like one or two videos that's like 50,000 views and up and I'm like, "Man, I just gave that presentation to an entire Gillette stadium." Like like
yeah, it
that's
sounds
crazy to
crazy.
think about.
Yeah, 50,000. How does that feel?
Yeah,
What goes through your mind when you see those numbers?
it's super weird. Like you said, I could probably name 30 people, like 30, 40 people in my life. And the fact that I have one that's, I think, 110,000. It's only one, but I have like 110,000. And it's like, 110,000 is like more than that are probably going to the Super Bowl. Like it's absolutely insane. So, yeah, it's super surreal.
Texas Longhorn Stadium is like 100. I think it's the biggest, and it's like 113,000, and that's a
Yeah.
full college stadium. You
Yeah.
know,
That's crazy to think about.
how many subscribers are you sitting at?
I think we're at 30, either 3,200 or 3,300. I think we're about 3,200 at the time of, talking about this. We've kind of gotten into a little routine of like 1,000 a year, which again, like I said, I'm not going into it to, try to blow up or anything like that. It's just about having fun and, taking people along for the ride. Like it's, it's kind of funny. Like I've always tried to like tell a story with my videos over a very long scale. So like if you look back at like videos from 5 years ago, like, and you kind of just go along the timeline, it's kind of telling a story, which is always kind of cool. Like you just see the growth and you see like the expansion and things like that. Like I look at myself from like 5, 6 years ago and that's like, oh my God, what the hell was I doing? Like it's funny in that way. But then, in 10, 15 years, you can look back and say like, man, I have all this cool stuff forever ingrained on the internet. Like that's pretty cool.
Sure, it's out there in the void. It's never coming down.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what was the intent what made you decide to start a channel, and what was the original intent, and has it evolved from day one up to the 7 years from now?
Yeah. I would definitely say the intention I just really like to share what I do. I think, in my opinion, what I do is really fun. Like, I think it's really, really great what I do. But, um, I feel like I do have a lot to share, like knowledge wise as well. In the summertime, we do like the fishing trips. You've been on a few of them as well. Like we've done fishing trips all around New England. I make it a point to disclose the names of the ponds because I find when I go looking for new lakes, I always go right online and, you know, what does the ramp look like? What does the fishing look like? Is it even worth going here? Like, what's the vegetation situation like? I always try to do that. In 9 times out of 10, unless it's my own video, I can't find that information out there. So I do think, doing that has been a really good thing that I've done. And I've actually gotten comments saying, like, man, I went to this pond just solely because of your videos, which is always pretty cool. But in the wintertime, we definitely focus more on like builds and projects, and we kind of dabble in like car repair, but not anything major, but um mainly kayak builds. So a prime example, we did the Garmin Force Current about a month ago. We did that. I do have a little bit of a professional background in marine electronics. That's something that in the kayak community, in my opinion, is extremely valuable information because there's a lot of by the seat of their pants, if that's the right way to put that, by the seat of their pants installs, especially on like Facebook and things like that. You go on blog posts for whatever kayak you're interested in, and you see some serious hack jobs. And if my videos can help somebody make the right choices, but more importantly the safe choices for their vessels, I'm going to try to do my best to explain that out. Because if you're not doing it safe, I don't think you should do it at all, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that's super important.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of the problem in our community is we have these kayaks that we want to add all this stuff to. And I know it's, you look back 10 years ago, and I've only been into this competitive or into kayak fishing on, for bass and maybe 5 years, but I'm sure you look back 10, 15 years ago, and back then the the modifieds and the builds are, insane. You're drilling into all this and running all these wires, and it's gotten a lot better with things being a little bit more seamless and plug and play, but yeah, you still have to do a little bit of modification, and nobody wants to buy a kayak for $3,200 and drill a hole in it, but I mean, you have to. I mean,
Yeah.
that's unfortunately, that's where we're at in the kayak business is you wanna put all this stuff on it, you gotta pay the price and do a little mods.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Probably at this point, maybe 10 years ago, kayak motors were not super common. Like, they were not common practice. And now I would say at least 60 to 70% of all the people that are on our tournaments are running motors, whether it's bow or stern. A lot of people are doing those. And, you know, it's definitely a slippery slope sometimes because, I encourage every single person who is considering doing a kayak build, considering doing a bow motor, a stern motor, it doesn't matter what voltage it is. I really recommend everybody out there to take a little bit of time, take 30 minutes, take an hour, and just kind of familiarize yourself with the basics of electronics and electrical. I'm not saying you should become a master electrician, but take 30 minutes, take an hour, and just really understand why overcurrent protection important? Why are breakers important? Why is sizing the wire appropriately important? Because if you understand why these things are important, it's a lot easier to do those things naturally. I don't even think twice about it. Like our build, that took 5-10 minutes to figure out, hey, this is the wire gauge you need to run, these are the breakers you need to run, this is where we're going to put it. So once those things kind of once you understand why you're doing those things, it becomes a lot easier. It's definitely getting better, but you occasionally see those Facebook posts or those blog posts that kind of disregard those non-negotiable safety requirements. I'm shocked we don't have more fires on kayaks, or you don't see news about people's boats catching fire. It's definitely something that's important. I wouldn't say it's like as important as a PFD. They're all very important, but PFD first, making sure you have all your electronics safely wired is a very close number two. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on all of that. I you're muted.
I was sneezing. And rightfully so too. You don't want to spend all this money on all these electronics. You're all excited. You get out there, like I've learned in the past. This year was extremely frustrating because I know nothing about electronics, and you and Jim are definitely my two electronic guys. I don't, I know what my lane is, and I know what my lane isn't, and these kayak builds and outfits. I'm just so illiterate to everything. I'm so hesitant about doing something. I don't want to do the wrong thing. So I almost shut myself off and say, there's no way I'm doing any of the work myself. I'll trust somebody else. I'd rather pay somebody to do it than me do it wrong.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fair. I actually think that's the better way to go. If you don't have 100% knowledge in what you're doing to the point where you can talk about it confidently to somebody else, my recommendation is, when in doubt, consult a professional. Consult somebody who can make those safe judgment calls and make sure that you can enjoy your boat on full 8-hour fishing days. Don't have to really stress or worry about, oh, is my wiring going to be okay today? You don't want to have to worry about that when you're fishing and trying to have a good time, or you're on a tournament day and you're 2 miles away from the ramp. That's definitely a big deal. So that's a better way to go. If you don't 100% know what you're talking about, it's 100% better to hand it to a professional.
Yeah. So let's go back to, I mean, we met kayak fishing in tournaments and stuff. And so you had the channel for 7 years, and I knew your first event was my first event because we caught last 2 years ago. So that's actually where you had a native, I had a native, so it kind of like struck up a friendly conversation. I remember you at the ramp. I don't know if you remember. You
Yeah,
looked miserable. You were sitting on the bench. I was like, "Are you all right?" And you're like, "Yeah, I just need a couple minutes." I'm like, "I gotta walk way up and grab my Jeep. Can you just watch my kayak for me?" You're like, "Dude, I'm not going anywhere." And you look
man.
defeated.
Yeah, so I'll put it into a little bit more context here. So it was I remember this date extremely well. It was April 7th, 2024. It was, I believe, 38 degrees outside. It was 45-degree water temperature, and it snowed. It was snowing for at least the first like hour plus of that tournament, and that was my first ever tournament. I was extremely underdressed. I had a raincoat on and a sweatshirt and sweatpants, and it was higher wind as the day got on. It was super high winds, and I was miserable. Like, I am shocked that I even landed one bass that day, and I did, and I finished 12th out of like 30 with that fish. So I remember, like, at the end of that tournament, and this was only my second trip with a Titan X 12.5. This is a brand new kayak on top of all that too. So I was still getting the lay of the land, trying to figure things out. And at that point, it was like an hour before the end of the tournament. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And I remember I was struggling to get my kayak onto the truck bed. And I was like, I just want to leave this thing here at this point. I just want to leave this thing here and go home. But thankfully you were there and you helped me get it up on the bed.
I did. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I was down on the ramp. Like, mistake number one, I was leaning. The truck was down at the ramp, almost halfway in the water, and I was trying to hoist it up, and my feet were like getting frostbite on them. I was like, yeah, I'm done. But thankfully, the tournaments got a lot better after that. Start with the worst one, and it only gets better from there.
Yeah, and the winds were crosswinds. So when I gave up as well. Like I caught one fish on a Ned. It was my first fish I ever caught on a Ned, and I think I was defeated 45 minutes in when I look at the leaderboard, and Matt Conan's sitting up there with 89 inches or something, and I'm like, man, I am in, like, this is such a rude awakening if I thought that I was just gonna come in and compete. And I know the shoulder months are not great for me, like the really cold winter and the early spring. I just don't historically do well. But
Yeah.
the crosswinds, I gave up around noon, and I went all the way in the back, right? Like all the way way back. I was trying to find calm waters, which is why I ended up way back there. But then coming back in, I had my pedal drive, and I didn't even have a year on that, right? I wasn't fully, like, I had a wetsuit on, but I wasn't fully prepared, right? And I was actually nervous, like, no joke. I was worried that I was gonna capsize, and I was trying to go at it on an angle where, like, into the wind, like, the wind's blowing this way, and I'm trying to, like, go in. And if I was, it's a long lake, so it took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I felt like if I stopped at any moment, the wind hit me and it was going to turn me sideways, and I felt like I was going to capsize. No joke. It
Oh
was
yeah.
the most nervous I've ever been in a kayak. And to top it off, like, you're in the middle of an event, and you're trying to compete, and
Yeah.
definitely rude awakening.
Yeah. That was the 10-foot one too, right? So that was even worse. It
Yeah.
was even less stable.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. That was a rough day.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it was just a moral victory because I stayed to the end and I caught one fish. So I did get on the leaderboard. But then the next event was Snippet to it. And I don't know if you remember the snip, the weather was bad again. I got buried way in the back. I ended up catching one fish, but because the wind was so bad, I got kept pushing me up against the bank. Then my picture got caught off, and I must have lost about 30 fish on buzzbait when I left there that day. And I can go back and pull the text message up, but not text message, the Facebook post. I was like completely humbled, right? Like, oh my God, I just had 2 insane, really bad fishing days. And like, just to know how much goes into it with the measuring of the fish and the positioning of your boat, there's so much more than just going out and catching them. And I was completely blown away. I said, it's an honor to share all the water with you guys, but this has been a humbling experience. And I stuck with it. It's easy to give up when you get beat up twice in a row. But the snippet to it will always haunt me because it's the only event that I didn't catch a fish in 2024. I did
Yeah,
full limits, but I at least got on the board in every event, including Waquaquic, which was the first one. But yeah, not at Snip. That's why when I went back the next year, we did that night trip. You were there. We did the night, and I took second. And the
yeah,
first,
I
I was
was
like, all
not at
right,
that one.
little bit of redemption. I'm a little happier. I wanted to at least compete in the real event, but at least I took second in the night one.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I know you said that you are much more of like when the weather's nice, you do better. Like early spring and late fall, you kind of struggle. I'm the polar opposite. Like when it's wicked cold out and when it's super windy, rainy, for some reason I turn it on and I don't. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I don't have live scope, so that I can't use that as an excuse. But yeah, I'm the complete opposite.
Yeah, Webster last year, it was what, March 29th?
Yeah,
The
March.
preseason showdown. You slammed it, dude.
Yeah, I did. I finished with like 84 inches and I won by about 12 inches, so somewhere around there. Yeah, that was a fun day. It started out rough. Like the first like 90 minutes, I was kind of like, oh, it's going to be another one of those tourneys where I'm just fighting to not be last. But then I get like a 19-incher, and this was all on a lipless crankbait, all on a red lipless crankbait. I didn't catch anything on anything else, but I ended up pulling in a 19 and then a 17. I finished with a 19 and a quarter, a 19, a 17, a 16, and a 12. I think I ended up finishing with all on a lipless crankbait. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. That was a fun drive home through downtown Providence in traffic. That was the first time I was smiling driving through traffic.
Yeah, in the middle of the first event, right off right off the rip. I'm sure you had a lot of high hopes for last year's.
Yeah, that kind of set the tone for me for like the rest of the year. I think I finished in 11th like the final scoring. I finished 11th, and I think you finished 10th. You beat me by like 6 points. But yeah, that was a much better year. 2024, I didn't really do amazing, which that's not really what it's about. I had a blast, so that's all that really matters. But 2025 in terms of like how I improved, I feel like I completely flipped completely turned the other corner in terms of, placement and fishing in general.
Yeah, I think one year fishing competitively for me was like 5 years of just going out and playing.
Yeah.
It's like I was like not only hyper focused in the event, but I was just soaking everything in at the beginning of the ramp, at the end of the ramp, talking with people. I don't really tell too many people this. This probably won't make the list, but if you watch at the beginning of an event, I always walk the shore and I look to see what people have on their line. Like I want to see patterns. Like if everybody's rocking a red lipless crankbait, and you bet your ass I'm going to be throwing one on when I get out there. Cause if the consensus is that they're all going to throw that, then I feel like that's a good, I'm not saying that's how I compete, but another tool in the bag as I go through and I watch everybody's baits and, especially some of the other ones, right? Like the John Ferreras and the Kens, and those dudes hide them.
Yeah. That was, I think that was the only time I ever beat Ken. In a full 8-hour day, that was the only time I did, and I beat him in a great way. I think Torrance mentioned this too on the podcast. I watched 2 of them last night, and he mentioned, you're not competing against the other anglers, you're competing against yourself, and that I could not agree with that more. It's the mental battle when you have one fish on the board and you're in 20th place and things that is not going your way. There's a 50-50 chance that I don't win that battle. And I will fully admit that, it ends up getting in my own head versus staying focused and level-headed. You probably end up finishing better than you otherwise would have. So that's hands down the biggest struggle. It's not really about competing against other people. I've never once felt that way in my entire time doing it.
Yeah, it's before you do the event, it's always You see the names and you're like, oh my God, these guys have been doing it for a decade. But then you break it down, maybe it's delusional confidence, but I go into every event thinking I'm going to win or place high. I don't know what it is. And then in the back of my mind, it's like, all right, we're all on who cares what they did in the past, right? You're on the water. You have the same conditions as me, right? We're all battling on the same lake, same fish. I think for me, I feel like that levels the playing field a little bit. Some people are going to fish a little better, but I don't know. I just feel so confident that it's like a reset, right? You get another chance, like a new school year, right? You start off with 100, right? And then what you do from there is how you're gonna, finish the tournament or the season. And I don't know. I just maybe delusional confidence, but I always go into every event just feeling like I'm gonna do well.
Yeah, I completely agree. You almost have to. If you go into it expecting to lose, you're gonna lose. Like I'll be 100%, and that goes for anything in life. Like if you go into it under the expectation that things are not gonna go well and that you're not gonna place well, that's exactly how it's gonna go. And that kind of goes, for prime example, for anybody that's watching this and is thinking about getting into tournaments and doesn't have all the fancy technology or live scope or anything like that. When I won that tournament on Webster Lake, I I have no live scope. I was doing everything off of 2D, clear view, and charts. That was the only things that were on my plotter throughout the whole day. I didn't even use side scan. For some reason I just do better when I have 2D and I don't get in my own head. So I won all of it doing that, and it was what, 40-degree water, 45-degree water.
You covered a lot of water too.
I did.
Yeah, I saw
I
you
pretty
a
much
couple
covered the whole
times.
pond.
Yeah, yeah, and that one bank. I mean, I saw you a couple times on the water, and that whole information rule. I try not to, but I was like,
Yeah,
I see you doing well, man. What are you getting them on? You like lipless?
yeah, yeah. But
I did not
yeah,
switch to a lipless and steal your thunder, but it's nice to know what they're biting on.
yeah. I mean, I will admit that the motor is nice to be able to cover water. I mean, that's just a factual thing. You can cover more water with a motor, but you absolutely do not need live scope or crazy technology to succeed in tournaments. And I think that win is living proof of that, especially in those conditions. Um, so it's obviously nice to have. I love technology. I will never say live scope's a bad thing because I don't believe it is, but you don't need it.
Yeah, for me, I wanted a motor more than the live scope, but that didn't work out in um, my trajectory. But I think a motor is definitely way more important than having. I mean, you need some sort of an electronic just so you can know water temp and depth and all that. But you're
Yeah,
right. I think a motor's especially like as you get older. I mean, I'm 45. Like I'm pedaling still.
yeah.
I go
I don't.
home and I go right to bed. Like I'm done. Like forget about it. There's nothing I
Yeah,
can do after an event.
yeah. I don't have that excuse. I'm 24. I don't have that.
Yeah, and even more so, you should be like doing cartwheels in the parking lot after you load up your kayak this year.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite route. I have a trailer on the way. I have motorized. I just, after many years of dealing with bed extenders and dealing with 150 plus pound kayaks, it's not even the physical aspect of it. It's the mental aspect. Like it wears you out. This at the end of this last season, 2025, I remember, being in early September and still hoping to have like 2 more months of the fishing season, and I was like, I gotta load this thing all the way up. I gotta unload it all. Like it's probably 2 total hours of
Yeah.
loading up to leave the house, unloading everything when you get at the ramp, loading everything back up, and then unloading it all again when you get home. It's, like I said, like 2+ hours of time. It definitely wears you out over the years. And 5, 6 years ago, I didn't even have a pickup truck. Like I was like just got my license like 2 years prior. I did everything out of a Toyota Camry. Burned so much oil. I definitely ran that thing dry a few times because I had no idea how to deal with cars at that time. But I did everything out of that Camry. And that was how I did it, and it was exhausting. So yeah, that's definitely a good point to bring up too, because it definitely wears you out.
Yeah, I had a 2003 Jeep Wrangler, and I had that thing for like 11 years. I loved it. So the first event I ever did, I took my wife's Jeep, with a native 87 pounds empty. I would lift that thing up on its side and up to not scrape it and put it on top. Right. So the first event I had the wife's truck, right? She was out of town. So I took her vehicle for the first tournament. Then the second one, I had my Jeep, and that was snippet to it, and then it broke down. And I was like, that's it. There's no, and the only logical thing that I was going to do is like, I'm getting a pickup. I could care less what pickup it is. You know, I wanted something used, low mileage. My wife wanted 4 doors. I wanted two. I'm glad I got the four, a little bit more storage. But yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I had that. And I had the Johnny Bass boat, and I was putting that on top of it. I had 33-inch tires on it. Like it wasn't easy. And as it got older, I'm like, oh, I can't. I was so glad I finally got a pickup. And now I'll be so glad when I finally get a trailer.
Yeah, I do think that a pickup truck is a almost necessity, especially as we get into like bigger, heavier kayaks. Trying to do all of that out of a bed extender or excuse me, out of a car top is next to impossible. It is doable, but you know, and I say this a lot, I try to be super active on like Facebook groups and things like that. I see it a lot on the Bonafide XTR group, that massive, almost John boat like kayak. Every like couple weeks you see somebody ask like, "Can you guys car top this thing?" And I'm like,
Bigger than the vehicle.
"No." Like so, you can do it. It's doable when you're looking at it, just fact for fact. It's doable, but then you start to ask the question of, can you continue doing this and enjoy doing it in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year? I guarantee you it's going to wear you out to your core mentally, and you're going to end up resenting the kayak. I've seen that more than once. People get all jazzed up to have a kayak like that and don't figure out the other aspects of it, getting it to the ramp, getting it off the ramp, and doing it in a way that doesn't wear you out. They don't think about that. And then you end up selling the kayak in a year because you didn't really take that time to think out those other aspects of it. Yeah, it's pickup trucks are super nice. Having the 4 doors is super nice. Be able to store all your stuff in the back seats and then store the kayak in the actual bed. One thing I do recommend though is a toolbox. The bed mounted toolboxes, whether it's on the sides or, right behind the glass there, like those rectangular toolboxes that rest on the bed, those are game changers. Because usually the bed is not short enough to be the make or break between like adding a toolbox, you can fit it. It's not usually a make or break. So, having one of those things is super nice for that, extra storage, and having storage underneath the seats as well. The back seats, getting some kind of like storage organizer or back seats that fold up. Yeah, those are some nice little tips to really extend your storage on your truck. But a trailer is the best one overall.
So if you had to, so if somebody was in the market for a kayak and you said the number one most important thing that you need to look for when purchasing a kayak would be X, what would you say X is?
What can you and your situation handle? Can you consistently handle 150 plus pound kayaks? Like my Titan X, I think is probably over 200 pounds now, which yeah, I'll be honest, that doesn't work for 99% of people. Like that doesn't make sense. Whether it's personally, can your body handle that? Can your vehicles handle that? It's all very subjective. So I really think it's worth having that conversation with yourself of, can I justify what this kayak has to offer? I getting off on a million different paths here, but prime example with the Titan X 12.5, and I'm guilty of this as well, where they designed a very motor ready kayak. And the issue with that, and it's not really an issue, but the issue with that is it makes the pedal drive very redundant. And, a lot of people want the opportunity to use both, but I'm finding in 3 to 6 months after they start using it, the pedal drive gets used less and less and less and less until it eventually just goes in their attic and doesn't get touched again. So I do think it's worth, having that honest conversation of, what do you want to carry around? Do you want an extremely heavy kayak? Do you want a stable kayak? Are you looking for, sit in or sit on? Do you want to motorize? Do you just want pedal drive? Do you just want a paddle? Every situation's different and it's, super subjective. So, I would say making sure that the kayak fits your needs, not just personally, but everything around you too, your gear, your vehicle, all of those things do matter. And, one person's opinion is very different from your opinion. So, it's definitely worth having that conversation with yourself and not just looking for it from others as well. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I know it's a little vague, but like I said, it's super situation dependent.
Yeah, I just wish the only thing for me is the extent of mine is my buddy had a Hobie and I knew I didn't want one. I noticed it right away. There was way too many moving parts in that flipper drive. And, like everybody has a Hobie. I kind of like, it's like why I don't like lobster, right? Like people make such a big deal about it. I don't see why. Anything with the Hobie, right? Like, it's a good kayak, but if you're telling me that the Hobie's the top of the line, I don't believe it, right? Like, all the kayaks have something to offer, but for me, I wish that we had more opportunities to sit in the kayak on water and go out. Like,
Yeah.
there's not, like, most of the places you purchase it from are not gonna be on water and let you test out the kayaks, right? Like, maybe in the South, there's a lot more opportunity with bigger bodies of water, better weather and stuff, but for me, I had to buy both kayaks sight unseen. I couldn't nobody had one. I couldn't sit in it, like, be on the water. I just wish that that was more of an option for people because that could, you buy a kayak and you sit in it, you realize 6 months later it's not for you. You're stuck with it.
Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
huge investment to be unhappy with.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do think there's a lot of kayak shops that do that, but I don't think it's around here in New England. I think with the cold and, prime example, it's 10 degrees outside right now. I just don't think a lot of those kayak shops do that sort of thing, but I do think there's a lot more of those sort of shops that let you demo it in places that don't get so cold. I'm starting to see that pattern. I mean, who knows? But prime example, I had to have my kayak shipped. I bought the Titan X when it first came out, which was early 2024, and I had it shipped all the way from Washington, I think. Washington State, so all the way across the country just to get my hands on it. So yeah, I completely agree with you about sort of a sight unseen thing. Everybody's, like I said, every kayak is different. Everybody's needs are different.
Yeah, in our area, what do we got? We have, Bananas Inc. right down at Wareham, East Wareham. They're not on the water, right? You have to go in and look at the kayaks. Then you got Three Bells, which shouldn't even be in business anymore. They should have all of their dealer privileges revoked, and I'm sure it's heading that way. And then, Troy, Mountain Trading Post, great dude. I love the place. I've been there a couple times, but they're not on the water. You can sit in it, but you're not on the water. There is a place in Rhode Island called the Kayak Shop.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
It's in Rumford, and certain times of the year I think they're the biggest one in Rhode Island. You can go and test kayaks out, but you gotta schedule it in advance and all that. It's kind of
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another great point too that you just made. When you're buying a kayak, do plenty of research on your dealer. That is like, and you kind of taught me that. Like that was absolutely something that, you need to consider every time because I'd say most kayak manufacturers, they ask you to go through the dealer first, and then if that really doesn't work, then to consult. For example, I'm just going to use Native. Native's customer service line second. And, that's a prime example. You had to wait, what, 45 plus days? And then at that point, you were just like, screw them, I'm done. Was that about right? Like
yeah.
45 days?
So a couple of red flags with that whole thing was, I always look back on it like maybe my expectations were here, and then this is what their expectations were. So like I always look back, maybe there's something I could have done different or thought different and not had so much frustrations. But I know that when they did it, it took them a few weeks to even respond to my email. Then they had to reach out to Native. Then it took another couple weeks. And then they told me that there wasn't going to be a truck. Now, so I'm already a month in. They told me there wasn't going to be a truck delivered. I could pay the shipping freight, right? But it's already a warranty at that point. Why am I spending $300-400 to have it shipped? So they were like, well, Big Adventure is going to ship kayaks up, at the end of August, right? So when I pulled the warranty, it was like the end of July. Now the end of June,
Yeah.
right? So
Tough
like,
time already.
right. I'm in the middle of like I hesitated. Should I pull it right in the middle of competition season, right? But I'm all right. Let me at least get the paperwork rolling and see where it goes. And then it took 7 weeks for them to finally say, all right, well, it's not going to be up here until the end. So I basically was like, I don't know what else to do. I started reaching out to people. Ken's like, go to Troy. Reached out to Troy. Troy's like, listen, I have a kayak here right now. Right now, I didn't know it was a Gen 1. Okay. If I knew, I might have been hesitant. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm just getting a brand new kayak. I'll probably do it. So the only issue is when I did this is I had a Gen 2 10-foot cracked hull, traded it in for the warranty. I wanted the 12-foot, so I had to pay the difference of it. Now, even if I wanted a 10-foot through Bell's, they didn't have a 10-foot replacement. So irregardless, I had to wait, right? It's not
Yeah.
like they had a 10 and I was choosing to wait for the 12. So Troy's like, listen, I got a 10 here right now. This was on a Sunday, right? On a Sunday. He goes, I have to wait until Big Adventures opens up. I'll call them tomorrow. He goes, I'm not an approved dealer, but I'm on the list to be approved. We are going to be approved. So he calls them, calls me on Friday, right? So this is how quick the turnaround was. I waited 7 weeks before I went to Troy. Message him on a Sunday through Ken. Ken reached out to Troy. I connected with Troy, called him on the phone. He goes, I'll call Big Adventures tomorrow. It's Friday. I'm walking into a employee holiday thing or employee gathering. We call them team builds. So I'm walking in, he goes, you want to hear some good news? I said, what? And he goes, your kayak's ready. I said, what? He goes, yeah, you can come pick it up right now. So 5 days later, now I know his situation was different, but it took him 1 day to contact them and 4 days for them to get the approval.
Exactly.
In my mind, I almost feel like they were dragging their feet because maybe they don't want to work with Three Bells at that point. And like, we're not going to get into the whole controversy
No, no.
this channel's about. But you know, if you're not familiar, Three Bells is known for having some horrible downfall over the last couple of years. I was just a small portion of it. You know, I hope they
Yeah.
lose their license because they don't deserve it.
Yeah. Again, the difference between almost 2 months in the middle of the fishing season versus 5 days. I mean, that's why it's super important to, take that time, really do research, even like ask online, ask about, hey, what do you guys think of this store? Does this store have any good reputation? And, I'm sure as with everything, there's always going to be negative reviews about anything. But, it's important to kind of get that feedback and, take the quality reviews for what they are and kind of make that decision. But, that's a bad look on Native Watercraft's part too. I'm sure there's been more situations more other than just yours where, somebody gets turned off to Native kayaks because their dealer's really dragging their feet. That's a bad look on Native as well. So, I'm sure that'll all get solved and figured out at some point on Native's end.
I have no ill regard. You know, they make the kayaks. They don't. You know, I get it. They don't want to be in the individual sales. Like they want to like have the dealers field everything. And not for nothing, like the dealers are getting the kayaks at a reduced price anyway. So they're upselling it, right? Like I mean, I know there's a MSRP on it, but I'm sure they're getting it for $5, $6, $7, $800 less than what it is because they're buying 2, 3 dozen at a time.
Yeah, they got to make a profit. Yeah, yeah. So definitely, dealer research is, just as important as figuring out if the kayak even fits your needs to begin with, But yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, let's talk about tournament fishing. Give us a quick rundown of why you decided to enter tournaments. You had already had the YouTube channel up for what, 4 or 5 years before you got into it. Was it just for content, or was there a little bit of a personal agenda in there?
It was absolutely personal. The videos are kind of an accessory to it. I never once did it solely for the videos, but I will admit, it is nice to have that little bit of shakeup in content. Gives people something to kind of look forward to. Because the fishing videos can only really go so far when there's no tournament or anything like that. After uploading like 1 or 2 a week of just, hey, going to this pond and catching 2 fish and going home, that doesn't really interest everybody, but having, tournaments every once in a while on the channel definitely gives it a super nice shakeup. Gives people something to look forward to, but it was way more of a personal thing for me. I was definitely looking to really expand my fishing kind of skills, my fishing knowledge, because I kind of had felt like I sort of plateaued in, I think 2023 was the last year I wasn't doing tournaments. I started in 2024. At the end of that 2023 season, I was like, yeah, I need to do a little bit more. I need to do a little bit more traveling. I need to do a little bit more exploring. I need to kind of just get involved with more people that share that like-minded interest. I would say that was the driving force of I'm around people that see kayak fishing the way that I do. So that was absolutely the main driving factor behind it. I was never in it to make money or chase first place every time. That one time I happened to do it and that was awesome, but I don't really care if I finish last every single time. If I have fun doing it, that's all that matters in my eyes.
Was that the only check you cashed for that first event?
Yes, that was the only time I ever cashed. I did finish third at that Winnacunnet event that you won, but I didn't end up making anything from that. That was my second best placement, aside from the Webster event.
Yeah, I think it was only 7 people, so only 2 paid out.
Yeah, I didn't really make anything from that, but it was cool to, put on the thumbnail of that video, third place finish. Because, hey, no lies were told.
Listen, if there's only 2 anglers and you come in first, it doesn't matter if there's 2, you still came in first.
Hey, first place is first place.
How do you feel about the competitive kayak scene in Mass this year? Like, tell us how you feel.
I like it. I think there's plenty of options for people to choose from. I think that's a really good thing. I don't think there's going to be much fight for spots like there was in previous years. I wasn't around for when MAKB did one main trail and you know how they split it up into four now. I remember people were saying like things would sell out like within 10 minutes. Like they were gone. I don't think we're going to have that issue this year. I don't think it's going to be, you know, I'm not going to have to get on my phone at 7:01 and make sure that I get a ticket. You know, there's plenty to go around, which is a good thing. You know, there's plenty of opportunities. There's multiple trails this year. So I'm definitely going to be doing Torrance's trail. I'm definitely going to be doing Ari's trail. That's going to be 100% guaranteed. I may do more, but we'll kind of see how the year shakes out time frame wise, like timing wise. Yeah, I do think it's in a really good spot. I think there's a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, and there's just a lot of different trails to go around. And I like that there's different rules to each one. I like the fact that Torrance doesn't do live scope on his. I think that's a great little shakeup. I like the fact that Ari does two motors. So there's something different for each one, which is cool.
Yeah, I don't know
So
if you
that's
looked at
definitely
the Ben's Tackle Shack, but they allow John boats.
they do. I didn't know that.
Personally, I think Ari's trail is going to be the most participated in, but I think the MABASS might have it as far as competition because there's a little bit more at stake, right? A little higher payouts. It's $100 entry fee versus 50.
Yeah.
They do allow, not allow. They are going to you have to fish every one to qualify for the championship. And then, you know, if you do well in the championship, top three, you get your entry fee for the national event in October. So a little bit more at stake. I talked to John Ferreira. He's one of the better in the state. And that's the one he's planning on fishing because there's a little bit more.
Yeah.
Again, I'm on the committee. I'd love to do every single event. That's a lot. It's
Yeah.
$100 per event, you know?
Yeah, we yeah, we talk very excited about it now, but I think, you know, the burnout's a real thing. Like absolutely it is. And that's partly why I'm somewhat glad we live in a cold climate. You hate it right now, but it's really good for not having too much burnout. Because, you know, I think if I lived in Florida or something like that, I would be really weary about burnout, you know, because you have that great opportunity to fish year round, it's going to wear you out. So, you know, as much as we hate the cold weather, I think balance is kind of the key to, you know, really, really enjoying something. So,
Yeah, a little reset. You know, you definitely like long for it through the winter.
yeah,
Even when you're on a competitive trail, like to set the October's the championship, right? So say you fish, not MABS. Say you fish the native BASS, right? So the championship's in October. So there's no events until February. So you do get that little 3 month, but I mean, if you're living in Florida, you're gonna want to go fishing still.
yeah,
But you're right. Like it is something for these Northeast anglers. Maybe that's why we're a little bit more of an edge on us. It's because we come back hungrier every year instead of that burnt out.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Matt has some hammers when we go, and we definitely show improve.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variety in the weather conditions too, right? It gets really cold at the start of fishing season, like 30, 40 degrees. You know, there's always a different attack plan, I guess, for the times of the year. So that keeps it interesting too. You know, Florida, it's pretty much other than it's been a little cold in Florida lately, but it's largely the same weather conditions all year round. It's always that 70 to 100 degrees, super humid, you know, 99% of the time. So the fish are, you know, the fish are largely doing the same thing. Obviously, they have their spawns and their post spawns and their pre spawns, all that, but
Two spawn. They spawn twice down in Florida.
they do.
Yeah.
I've never actually gone seriously bass fishing down in Florida, but
Yeah, so I think below like that not Mason-Dixon line, but like the Bible Belt area, like Georgia, Tennessee, even in like up into the Carolinas to some extent, those bass have two seasons. They actually spawn twice. Just because the water temperature hits that optimal and they don't know any better, right? They have that biological temperature that tells them now it's the time to spawn. So usually they get two spawnings in. So I mean that's why they grow so big down there.
right, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to be. I mean, I'd love to be down there in the Kissimmee right now.
Yeah.
That would have been fun fishing in
Yeah.
Florida in the middle of the winter while everybody's hooped up in a snowstorm.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of one thing I hope to do with this trailer is to kind of extend the areas I can go solo, you know, because you know, I don't know if I would drive all the way down to Florida without having a truck bed, being able to carry things other than fishing stuff like luggage and clothes and, you know, your daily essential stuff, you know, I don't think that'd be at least comfortable, you know. So trailers kind of are you can accomplish more than one thing on just trailers. You know, you can do a lot more.
I have a goal of fishing one out of state event this year. It'll probably be with the NHBASS. Right in the middle of June is Messalonsky. I don't know if you ever fished there. It's an
I've heard of it.
amazing fisher.
Really?
Yeah, and then just do the event and shoot home. It's like a 5 hour, 4 or 5 hour drive up there. But I mean, it's on the docket. June 27th.
Yeah, yeah, it's super funny you mentioned that. Last season, I always go down to Lake Winnipesaukee every year, and take like 3 4 days and just kayak fish Winnipesaukee. And while I was down there, they were doing the Winnipesaukee event. I can't remember which trail it was, but they were doing the Winnipesaukee event while I was down there, and I didn't even find out till after. I was like, oh man, like if I
I
had known that,
messaged
I would
you.
have. Yeah, wasn't even thinking. It was, man, I should have done it. The timing would have worked out perfectly, but oh well. It's funny because I pretty much covered all of Alton Bay, and then I covered a little bit of the main part of Winnipesaukee, kind of around like Rattlesnake Island. I don't know if you know where that is. It's close. It's a little bit further south Winnipesaukee, not really north Winnipesaukee, but never even saw one kayak. That just goes to show how. And I was fishing. I confirmed it. I was fishing while the tournament was going on. Never even saw one other kayak out there. So that's just just shows how big those ponds really are.
Yeah,
Lakes, I guess.
washing Pasaki.
Yeah,
Everybody says, watch out, it's a washing machine. At some point, they're going to ban tournaments during the busy season. It's
yeah,
coming. It's
yeah.
definitely. What do you have for expectations this year? Do you have any anything you want to accomplish? Or you just shaking it one event at a
You
time?
know, I think, tournament wise, I'm definitely just kind of going into it with the same expectations. Having fun first. That kind of, that's what it's all about for me. The second it stops having fun, I don't even know if I would continue it. That's what it's all about for me. And thankfully, it's never stopped being fun, but continuing just having fun with it, obviously trying, you want to try. So, my goal is going to be to land high, or place high. But if that doesn't work out, totally fine in my book. I'm kind of going into it with no expectations. And, you know, you're going to be happy nonetheless if you have no expectations. So that's going to be the goal for me, to place as high as I can while still having fun. Personally fishing wise, we have some trips planned. We have some fun stuff planned. Just going to continue to find new lakes to fish. I've got probably 7 to 10 that I want to fish that I have never fished before in Massachusetts. So definitely be trying those. We have our New York trip coming here pretty soon. So that's going to be a pretty big moment for, fishing, but also for that YouTube channel as well. Probably got another Winnipesaukee event planned for me, another trip to Winnipesaukee. So, that's going to be kind of my main, goals for this year is just, to catch as many fish as I can while having fun doing it. So that's all that matters to me.
Me and Jim were trying to book. We're going to Cayuga this year to put it out there. That's the trip you keep mentioning. We have 6 guys that we're going with, but we were trying to book it for the following week, right? So the first time me and Jim went last year, we were there for like the first week in May, and it was really cold. I mean, we got back-to-back 40-degree days with 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds, and it rained pretty much the entire time. So the fishing was great at the beginning, but you could see it start to taper off as the days went on and the weather really dipped. So we're going a week later this year. So we're the 9th to the 17th. But if we were able to get it, now I know it was availability, like we were trying to get one house with multiple 4 bedrooms and couldn't do it. We ended up getting the 2. But if we had booked it the following week, that Saturday, there's the trail up there. So we could have done an out of state tournament. There's no entry fees for it, like you pay 130 or something. But there was a big event up there on that Saturday. Jim's like, "Oh, we should try to do it." And like I'm all for it. Like, we're already going to be on the water anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did not work out, but I mean, who cares? We're gonna definitely get up there and hammer them.
It is what it is. That's going to be one of those situations where I'm just going to fish until I completely exhaust myself. Like just go, go, go until I physically cannot go anymore. It's going to be one of those situations for me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait.
Yeah. 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 It's going to be fun.
Any spots like anything on the trails that pop out on you? Any of the locations that you're really excited to fish?
I mean, I would have to look at it again, but, I think Ari's event is doing Snippet to it, right?
So April, Ari does not have an event in the first. They had to push it. So their first event is the Charles River in May. I'm sorry, no, that's Torrance. One, they pushed it out the following week. So Seabacks, which is Ari's group, we keep mentioning Ari. It's the first Saturday in May. I believe it's the second. They had to
Yeah.
put it out because they didn't want to do it on the same day that MABASS has an event. That's at John's Pond. We did that. We were there last year for the East.
Yes. Yes, we did do that pond. That pond had a tough parking situation. Yeah, that's nuts.
Did you see the world? They got the new World Series coming next year. It's called the World
I did
Series
see
of
that.
Fishing. Top 25 for Bassmaster, top 25 for MLF. Freaking $1.2 million first place prize. The first $1 million winner in bass fishing history, which would be crazy. I mean, $500,000 is a lot, but that's a lot of money.
It's an insane amount of money to fish, like, and let alone freshwater bass fishing.
I guess
Yeah.
when you're at that level, I mean, the sponsorships are rolling in. I mean, you're probably making $100,000 a year in fishing. That
Yeah, I mean that's some people's day jobs. Yeah, it's insane. I'll probably never see that kind of event in my life, and I'm totally okay with that.
now we're gonna get to some national events. We're definitely gonna plan it. We have the right group of people to travel and fish with, so we're definitely gonna have some on the horizon. I'll be dragging you.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to talk about on the channel?
But those of you who follow me and those of you who check us out, definitely, we got a lot of fun stuff planned. I know I mentioned the trailer in this video. We're going to go pretty in depth on that trailer. It's a Fish Texas trailer. They make them completely handmade from scratch. They have welders. They do all of that stuff. So that'll be really exciting. We're going to go pretty in depth on that. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'm definitely getting the beginning kind of stuff together for 2026, that fishing season. I know I just mentioned that, but we got the Titan X 12.5 going on. That's my main kayak. I've got that build series going. I'm never going to stop doing that build series until I get rid of that kayak. So, we might go into 30, 50 parts. Who knows? But yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff planned. So definitely if you just found out about this channel for the first time or are interested, definitely check me out. It's Untamed Outdoorsmen on YouTube. I also have an Instagram, but mainly YouTube. We're doing a lot of fun stuff all about, New England fishing, but mainly Massachusetts, like southern New England fishing. So yeah, thank you so much for having me today. This was a blast.
Hey, I just want to circle back. I got one
Yep.
question. When you have your channel going and you're at these spots and you're essentially burning the spot, do you ever get any backlash for pointing out where you're at?
No, I've never gotten anything like that. I don't really think I've ever really posted a pond that's super like not heard of and not popular and is like a secret, like absolute honey hole. I've never really posted anything to that extreme. So no, I've never gotten anything quite like that. Honestly though, if I ever like went to this no-name pond that was a super secret hidden grail and I pulled out just absolutely incredible bass, I probably wouldn't even post it, to be completely honest with you. But I've never had a pond that has been that amazing and that much of a well-kept secret. No, I have not had anything that crazy.
I have a couple on my list this year. They're really, really small that we have to hit. I'll text you or message you on the side.
Yeah, usually there are a few ponds. Like I have probably 5 or 6 ponds on my channel that I specifically don't disclose the name of. And there's a multitude of reasons behind that, but usually they're really like I have one and you and I have fished at it one time. It's a really, really good fishery, and I won't post the name of it, but I will make videos on that pond. I just won't disclose the name of them.
Yes, sir. Any last predictions for the Patriots game?
Go Pats. Seahawks are going to throw it at the 1 yard line, hopefully, and we'll get an interception, and we'll celebrate.
Christian
Go Pats.
Gonzalez.
Yeah. Christian Gonzalez, 1 yard interception to win the game. Yeah, let's hope. I'm going, man. I think it's going to be a close game. That's my guess. I think a lot of people are counting the Patriots out because, everybody hates the Patriots. Everybody outside of New England hates the Patriots. So, I think it's going to be like a 28-24 kind of game. I think it's going to be a really close game. That might have actually been the score of 2014. I can't remember, but like 23-20, something close like that. Patriots going to win it, of course.
I think they're 3.5-point underdogs, so they're saying it's going to be more than a field goal score. But we'll see.
I love it.
Anything can happen.
I love being an underdog. Love it. I love that Drake May got snubbed off the MVP. I love that we're underdogs. It just fuels that fire even more.
We'll definitely do this often. We'll
we'll bring
absolutely. Up some more topics and get every couple weeks we'll bring you on and we'll talk show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was a fun little chat. I feel like this was a really good one. So yeah, I'm gonna keep supporting your podcast. I'll use my channel as an opportunity to hopefully grow yours. Yeah, let's have a great year.
Yes, sir.
Go Pats. Let's have a fun Super Bowl. Hopefully I don't stress myself out too bad watching this game because I know I'm going to be hunched over on the couch. So yeah, let's have a fun year. Go Patriots.
All right, bud. We'll talk soon.
All right. See you soon.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Later.